Hi, my name is Alvin Carpio, and I want to share a story with you about what it was like growing up as a person of colour and a second generation immigrant in England. For context, my mum came to this country when she was 19 to work as a chambermaid cleaning hotels in the Lake District, and my father came later to work as a waiter. As a kid, there was one weekend where me and my friends really wanted to go to the beach. We had actually just got these new fishing rods, and it was our dream to try and catch a shark. Not that there are many sharks on the English coast, but it was our dream to use these fishing rods and try and catch a big fish. So we really tried to convince their parents to take us on a road trip to the sea. Luckily, the parents said yes, and myself, Jer and Ryan and their parents went on this road trip to Clacton-on-Sea, which is a coastal town in England. So we do this lovely road trip with a couple of fun stopovers, and by the time we get to Clacton-on-Sea, head straight towards the seaside and pull out the fishing rods and try and go fishing. Spent a few hours, and unfortunately at the end of the day we caught absolutely nothing. So we then, at the end of the day, packed up our stuff. Still, it was fun, it was cool, it was jokes, just chilling and having fun. And so we then packed up it and started to leave the beach to head towards the car park to go home. Whilst we were actually heading back, we then hear shouts. And at first we didn't actually know who the shouts were targeted at because we don't know anybody there. So, we wouldn't think it was towards us. But the shouts kept on coming. Shouting. And then we realised it was actually shouting targeted towards us. And when we listened to it closely, you could actually tell it was towards us because there were racial slurs and racist comments towards me and my friends. Jay and Ryan are both also Filipino, so they have brown skin like me. And the next thing you know is that the shouting continues, but then it gets louder because they're actually coming closer to us. So much so that they then push one of my friends, who then pushes them back to defend himself, and we've got this whole confrontation right there on Clacton-on-Sea. The problem was that there were even more of them that were coming, and so we were outnumbered, and so we decided, look, we need to duck and we need to leave. So we turned around, made our way, picked up our pace towards the car park, and then we saw the car and then jumped in the car. Their dad then asked, what is going on? And we told him the situation very quickly. And he then says, why don't you go out and fight them? And it was clear, we can't fight them. They were outnumbering us. It was in a place we didn't know, and they had weapons. So he then goes out of the car, tells them to go away. And of course they didn't. So he then gets back in the car and turns on the engine. Whilst we were about to go, the next thing I hear are stones and rocks. Stones and rocks were being thrown at the car. Stones and rocks were being thrown at the window. You can hear the stones and rocks on the window being thrown. And stones and rocks were being thrown at us simply because of the colour of our skin. We didn't know these kids. They didn't know us. And the only reason that they wanted to target us and say these racist things was simply because of the colour of our skin. And I remember feeling shocked but not surprised, and somewhat confused. And today the anger is it's just anger. Why did that even need to happen? And so, it's not the only time something like that's happened. What's crazy is that this stuff happens all the time. I've been spat at, I've been called names, I've got into fights simply because of the way I look and the colour of my skin and my race and my ethnicity. And my question is, why? Why does it actually need to be that way? And so when I see the protests, Black Lives Matter, and all the supporters of these protests that are fighting against racism, people saying like, it's not relevant for today. Like, the whole point is that it's not necessarily about only what's happened over the last few days. People are angry and are expressing this anger because it has been years and centuries of this kind of stuff that's been happening. And for the first time in a very long time, people feel like they can actually share these stories. And, it's my hope that by sharing this story, others will be encouraged to share their story, to raise awareness, to show what's happened, what's really happening. Because one of my surprises is that actually a lot of people are surprised. Like, they're surprised that this stuff is happening, as if it's not, they can't see it right in front of them, or at sometimes they can't even see that they're partly responsible for what's happening. And so that's why I think people need to stand up, they need to speak out, they need to share these stories, because then at least people will see the reality that so many of us face. And once that reality is seen, then at least others can decide whether or not they want to do something about it or not. I mean, put it this way. I remember asking my little cousin Sam, who's, in the early years of secondary school, what does he think about what's happening? What does he think about the rise of racism towards East and Southeast Asian folk during the coronavirus? People who are being told to go back to their countries, or that we're the cause of the coronavirus because of the color of our skin, and that we eat bats and that we eat dogs, and it's all because of us that's the problem, and all other forms of racism. And he said, my cousin Sam, his biggest worry, given all that's happening, is that despite all of this, people will still take it as a joke. Sam, who's a young kid, new generation, his worry is that nothing will be done. And for me, that worries me too, because there have been decades and centuries of folk who have tried to fight against all of this, and yet we have the same kind of thing happening over and over and over again. And so don't be surprised when this anger and resentment and frustration just bursts, and people are just letting loose because of all of the anger and the problems that have been ignored for so long. In the end, I don't want this to be a message of anger. I want this to be a message of what's really happening, and hopefully for others to step up and encourage others to share their stories so that we can really know what's going on. And by doing that, with that knowledge and that awareness, hopefully you can work together, no matter where you're from, to try and end this virus of racism. Thanks for listening.